everyone. It's another episode of our weekly snooker podcast, the Talking Balls podcast. I'm your host, Michael Wright, Righto74. I'll let my co-host introduce himself.
Hi everyone, I'm Lee. Great to be here. Welcome. It's great to be chatting to Jason today.
And a good lead into our guest. So we're very pleased and very chuffed. Jason's been very accommodating. We have got the chair of the WPBSA, Jason Ferguson. So welcome, Jason.
Hello, how are you? You're doing a great job, guys. Really interesting, some of the things you're talking about and some of the players you're talking to. Some great things coming out. So keep up the good work. Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jason. That gives us encouragement already. So I guess that people who are listening or watching on the YouTube, we might have different levels of knowledge about what the governing body does and also the way it works with the World Snooker Tour. So perhaps you could just give us an insight. I can see you're in the office now, Jason. So maybe just something about what what does the chair of the governing body do, if that's not too broad a question to kick us off?
Do you know, it's actually a fantastic question because the whole structure sometimes hides behind what you see on TV, and the structure of the sport is actually paramount to the sport's development, how it works commercially, how it develops on the ground, how it links into the amateur game and everything else. And the WPBSA is the world governing body to snooker and English billiards, is really that hub in the middle of all that. And I guess we're very frontline. So in terms of my role, I'm very often the first off the plane in new territories, the first to find out who the ministers are and who we work with and who the promoters are and things like that. And we work with, of course, our company at the side of us, World Snooker, which is the company Barry Hearn chaired. So if you would just imagine us as a two-company structure to start with, World Governing Body WPBSA, which is a company limited by a guarantee. That means it's a not-for-profit organisation. It derives income to reinvest in making it bigger, better and stronger and service the sport and its players. So that's the kind of basis. We own 26% stake in World Snooker Limited, and we effectively were part of the original licensing of the tour to World Snooker. So World Snooker is a commercial event business which runs commercial events. That's really the creating venues, creating structure, creating seating, selling tickets, selling sponsorship, selling television rights. But actually the two organizations are so intrinsically linked, not just contractually, but actually in the way that we work. And simply because one is almost like one is a sport and like a government side, and the other side is a commercial operator which can grow hungrily. It's a fantastic structure, I have to say. So many sports have looked at it and said, wow, I wish we had that. It's really been testament, that structure, to the growth that we saw over that 10-year period, because we came out, as you know, with your 6 events 10, 11, 12 years ago, and we went bang, 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 grow, and we were out jumping on and off of aeroplanes and ships, boats, planes, buses, trains, whatever it was, every day in search of new markets, new territories and growing. And what comes in with that is working alongside a proper commercial operator who has a wealth of experience in actually commercializing events. And that's what Barry Hearn and his team at Matchroom Sport brought to that table. So it's a great relationship, actually, and it's a great structure. And look, we've got so much work to do still, and we're excited about what's ahead of us.
Yeah, so no, that's a great intro. So for anyone not sure, I think what was important from what you said was you've got clear duties, but there's quite a lot of crossover, and you work together really closely from the sound of things. In terms of if we were to draw, I don't know if this is too simplistic, but I know a lot of snooker fans like football as well. If we were to draw a parallel with football, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, but in my head, I'm thinking of almost WPBSA as something akin to FIFA. Or if it was in England, it would be the FA perhaps. And then the Premier League is almost the venture that runs the sport day to day. Is it a little bit like that? Is that too crude a comparison?
It is. Do you know what? It is quite similar. I guess we'd be like the FA with World Snooker being the Premier League, and the FIFA bit is the additional bit that we do globally. So we have that global arm as well at the side of us. And WPBSA, incidentally, is made up of a group of organisations. When we first, let's turn back the clock again, just to explain it a bit clearer. When we first came into this new commercial arrangement, WPBSA owned World Snooker Limited, the event company. It was a company, actually, I set up many, many years ago when I was chairman the first time. And it never really traded properly. It never really separated its responsibilities properly. And that was one of the secrets, really, to actually taking away anything that could be potentially political to anything that could go into sound and solid commercial agreements. So we made that break. So that two company structure is what you see running the World Snooker Tour and contributing to that growth. But underneath the WPBSA, we also have an international sports federation called the World Snooker Federation, based in Lausanne in Switzerland, close to the IOC offices. That really is an arm which we can use to go into other markets, other countries, and look to develop amateur sport, but also utilize that as growth for the whole game, if that makes sense. But also allow it to expand things like finding new coaches out there. You know, there's some magical people. What I love about my job is the magical people around the world. It's like you guys, the first time I've met you today, you guys are magical in your own right because you're passionate, you're keen, you're contributing. There are people like you all over the world. Some of them are coaches, some of them are referees, some of them are just running junior clubs, some of them are running huge events, you know, promoters. And that's what I love is that ability to extend that arm and find those relationships where we can grow that network. And so underneath WPBSA, we've got that World Snooker Federation, which is our IF. But under all that, we've also got World Disability Snooker. Snooker. We've got World Women's Snooker, which we know now is a tour qualifying tour. We've also still got World Billiards. We're responsible for our history and heritage of English billiards, you know. And that's an interesting one because, you know, it was practically dead. It's actually doing okay. The team at World Billiards are developing numbers of events. They're getting more players than ever before in my lifetime playing English billiards. I even seen a junior playing the other day online who was 10 years old. So it's those little things that are still around that kind of preserve the history and heritage of the sport, but also it's great to see just activity and people doing things different. So it's really important that activity, that we are a sport for all, and what's important is that we can demonstrate the equality, the diversity, and where are the gaps? What are we not doing? Where should we be attracting more people from? And I think the women's game is a great example of that.
Yeah.
I think historically women have been at a distinct disadvantage in snooker because of the environment that clubs were found in. They weren't necessarily places where many women were found, and it was actually historically there were a lot of clubs that were men only back in our history. All that's been stamped out. We move forward, but we need to attract more women to the sport, and it is working, as you see.
And on that one, I mean, the beauty of this is that, and already we can tell that you're going to be great because you give us quite a lot to go on in a way, which makes it a good conversation. So in a way, I guess the bit there about the women's game. I mean, what are your thoughts on? There's something around any press is good press, any news is good news. But obviously, we had the British Open, we had Mark Allen, Rhiannon Evans, but a lot of people, I would imagine, would have been inspired by some of the story, the status and the profile that Rhiannon was bringing to the tour, really. And obviously the national coverage around that match, which, irrespective of what you feel about the match itself, it really put the women's game very much out there, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is what World Women's Snooker is all about. When, Mandy Fisher, bless her, who has been passionately developing women's stuff, trying to keep it going all these years of the snooker having its ups and downs. She's kept it together. WLBSA, it was called, World Ladies Billiards and Snooker Association. It's got all that history, and she's kept it together. But actually, she was on her own with a few volunteers around her. We put an arm around that organisation. That's been reformed into World Women's Snooker. It's now governed by the WPBSA, much the same as World Snooker Tour is. So it has that governance structure in place. And what's come from there is a slow increase in players over the years, but an increase in standard. We know, and Lee, I know you're a snooker player because I've seen you.
Sometimes.
This is just a numbers game. A woman can play equally as good as a man. Yeah. On the same field of play. But there is such a wide gap between the number of men playing around the world and the number of women playing that we're seeing less women come through. But what we have done, we've gone from a handful of players, which Mandy Fisher did a fantastic job keeping going. We've lost a few over to the US playing in pool. But actually what we've seen in the last few years is growth. So you're starting to see that 40, 50, 60 players from 15 to 20 countries. Well, what that brings is new opportunities. It brings the new markets to the table. You know, take Nguyen from Hong Kong. You know, she's a huge star in Asia. You know, and deservedly on the World Snooker Tour. And the Rianne story, her appearing there. I mean, of course, we're not going to get involved in any personal matters whatsoever. But actually, her appearance against a leading player on centre stage in a major event is really what it was all about. And it has, without a doubt, inspired many more. Even though we've had lockdown, even though it's difficult and been very hard to get the qualifying series back up again, World Women's Snooker made a start. They ran an English Women's Championship under the English Association, and we've seen new faces. You know, and isn't that nice? That tells you that the message is actually getting through, and that's thanks to people like you that are out there blogging and telling our story all the time. So, you know, that's down to you. But look, it is exciting. And who knows what will happen in the long run. But there is no, it's about removing barriers, and the barriers have been removed.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll go to you soon, because actually I think we're interested to know about Jason Ferguson, the man, as well as your role. But I mean, obviously we're only a couple of days after, you know, quite an important announcement really about the provisional tour card structure for next year, and obviously looking at who gets places and the structure of it to get as far as the tour. So that sounded like quite an exciting announcement, really, jointly with the tour on Thursday. Do you want to say anything more about that, Jason?
Yeah, of course. It's been a long time coming, and it's a little bit late because of you know, post-COVID getting things started up again. And you know, we've got so many partners around the world, and there are so many territories that we want to be working in, and we want to extend our arms out to bring players in. But actually, many of those countries have had borders closed. Many have been locked down. Much of that activity around the world has actually come to a complete standstill. Fortunately, some is back up and running. Portugal, the European Championships are back up and running in Portugal. So we know we're going to have a minimum of a European junior, a minimum of a European champion. So on top of that, we're now making plans to deliver a slightly modified version, but a manageable Q Tour. This is the Challenge Tour, of course, to bring, again, extra players through. That will bring 2 more players through by the new year. We will also be announcing news soon on the World Amateur Championships, which we run inside the World Snooker Federation. We're looking to run an open and an open junior event. I have a passion for amateur snooker, I have to say. It's been my life, this sport, and I know what the structures allowed me to do from where I grew up, and how it allowed me to go anywhere in my life. And that's something that really makes me tick. And what we've got here now is a structure under the World Snooker Federation where we're throwing the sport open. And we are going to the federations, and we are going to people to say, please send us your national champions. They'll be respected. We'll be delighted to have them. But we're also saying, what about that one person in the far corner of the world who hasn't got the opportunity or the income or anything? We've got to start and work on these territories. We can't expect everybody to jump on an aeroplane, pay the money, travel across the world, turn up, play snooker. One, they need to be good enough. Second, they need to be good enough and win. This is a tough sport. Even when you're good enough, you can get hard behind it, don't you? So, but on top of that, it's the financing of that. It's the travel. It's the border controls. It's the visa support. It's all this needs resolving. And we are passionate at the World Snooker Federation to resolve that globally, and allow players to compete on an equal and level playing field. So we've got lots going on.
Yeah, and we touched upon that with Neil Lee. Do you remember that was one of, I mean, apart from the Crucible, which seems to have been the main talking point people took from it, it was actually a very long interview and a lot of really interesting subjects. And Neil touched on that, didn't he, about his journey, if you like, from being in Australia, going to the other side of the world to hit to the hotbed of the sport. And actually quite difficult, isn't it, to do that, to go all the way across. And that's, I think he felt that was a potential barrier for new kids coming through in Australia. Did you pick that up as well, Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. Neil spoke in length about you know, his struggles, and he dropped off the tour and he got back on, came with a pocket full of money, and he had to make it work. So all these pressures that were on Neil, I suppose they're on other young aspiring snooker players too.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I think that, you know, the distances are vast. If we think everything's going to happen here, it clearly can't. It has to be, it has to be broken up. And interestingly, our World Amateur Championships we were taking, we announced that this January just gone, they were supposed to be in Adelaide in Australia. And again, this is part of our vision. Our vision is, well, right, where haven't we been? We took a leaf out of the EBSA's book. Where have we not been? Where do we need to go? Where is it hardest from? And we're looking at that to try and move these events to mop up that talent, and it's great. And other speaking slightly on a side note to that, if we look at what we did in Africa a few years ago, my good friend Mohammed Kamar, who runs the African Billiard and Snooker Confederation, you know, he came to me a couple of years ago and said, you know what, we've only got a handful of countries in Africa playing. He said, but the African Games, how about it? You and me, we'll go. We'll present. I'll get you in the room. You present. We'll talk. I'll get you with the right. Let's do it. Let's start. A few years ago,
love it.
We delivered snooker to the All African Games.
Wow.
And we watched the Moroccan player be carried out of the arena, celebrated as a gold medal winner. You know, and it was emotional. You know, and in my pocket was an envelope to say, "This is it. The tour card is in here." You know, gold medalist. You know, Amir came on the tour, he spent 2 years, found it hard. Of course he found it hard. He's coming from all this territory. But what he has done has inspired a whole region of the world. He's a huge star now. The numbers on social media are enormous. He is a big star. He's been followed, and he's done his nation and his territory proud. And that's really where I spend quite a bit of time developing the sport.
And that's interesting. I mean, we're running a poll today on Twitter. I do one every Saturday, and one today is from comments from Matthew Selt. He made some comments. I don't know if you heard it, but on the WST podcast, and that was about the size of the tour in terms of the amount of players on it, and the fact that, you know, if you're in the lower reaches, you might struggle to make a good living. And he talked about a secondary tour as well, but almost what you're saying there, though, is an argument that's not considered in that, really, which is that actually there's something about having people who are, whether they want to be or not, but ambassadors for the sport in different locations, and almost capturing the imagination of different people around the world to say, actually, if that person's out there on the tour, well, maybe I could aspire to do that as well. So it's a lot more, isn't it, than about just, are we looking after the players financially? It's a bigger agenda, really.
It is a much bigger agenda, and interestingly enough, I voted on your poll this morning. It says, cut the tour, know the tour's the right size, or should we, you know. Anyway, I voted no, the tour is the right size, and I'm going to justify that. We're on this blog. So what we've got is a structure that has to have room for the players that come in and the players that go out, and that has to also needs to have the room for players to requalify if they are good enough. We do know a lot of young players come on tour, find it tough. Neil Robertson, we spoke about earlier, fantastic example, came on tour, found it tough, sorry about that, went back, was always good enough. Second bite, got to have the second bite. It's got to be there. So we have to have a structure that accommodates that. If you do split the tour, you are limiting the ability to bring in those stars and toughen them up against the toughest players in the world. And the structure we've got is, you know, it's tough to stay in the 64. It's tough to get in the all-year list. It's tough to fall off and get back on from Q School. But it's also very tough if you live in Australia and you want to get on the tour. So we have to have all these elements bringing the tour together. I'm going to give you a great example of why I believe in this so passionately. Many years ago, I remember bringing a team of players to England. I was chairman of World Snooker back in 2000 and something, I forgot, such a long time ago. But anyway, during that period of time, I brought a team of players over to the UK from Asia, which was funded by the WPBSA. Wasn't a huge sum of money, wasn't a huge cost. I was criticised for it at the time. And my vision was that we're not quite scratching that surface properly in Asia, China, Thailand. You know, we've been in and out of these territories, but we've never really developed it properly. What you need is local stars. So the players came over here. They trained against the best in the world. Peter Ebden was very helpful with this, by the way. He was practicing with these players. At the time, he was, of course, a world champion, you know. Those players then went back. We developed the Asian Academy in Bangkok within the government buildings called the Raja Mangala Stadium, which is where they played the Asian Games. We had a proper training academy in there. The players went back there. They then trained against the players from all over Asia, and they were coming in and out into that academy. Again, activity which is still to this day supported by us. It works. One of those players that came to the England as a young teenager who couldn't speak a word of English, which we got criticised for bringing over, was Bing Wei.
Oh, wow. I've heard of him.
Now, he went back to China eventually, won the China Open in Beijing as a wildcard, amateur wildcard qualifier. He won a major.
Wow.
Went to superstar status overnight, and he is, by the way, a superstar. You know, he is, huge for this sport, and he has inspired a whole nation and a whole region of the world again. And that we have to learn from that. We have to make sure that we can do that still. And there's still so much untapped territory in the sport. We also lose players over the years. We lose players that go, they perhaps play, get good enough, get to a point, and then end up in the education system, and we lose them. Why do we lose them? We need to keep them. If they're going in the education system, we need to keep them. If they're at uni, they need to be playing in the university games, university snooker, and they need to be able to qualify for the tour. So all these things are going on. I got slowed down a bit through COVID. It shut me down a bit for a while, and I honestly, I was, oh wow, what am I going to do now? I was jumping on and off airplanes every week doing something, and so we have to pick this work has to be picked back up. We have to get back into these projects, and the projects are there, and I'm quite excited. I'm optimistic about the future, shall we say?
You touched on Ding there, Jason. Obviously, I think if Ding won the World Championship, I think it'd be huge for the sport, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. I mean, you know, the moments when he gets close every time in China. I mean, if you were ever been in China during those times, you could walk down the street and the TVs are on in all the restaurants, and everybody's like this. You know, I mean, he's big news, and he's very well thought of and celebrated. The one thing I love about the way it works there, they do love him. Whether he wins or loses, they love him, they celebrate him, and it's great to see. And of course, many young players have followed in his footsteps, and we're yet to see that one that's going to really push on, other than Yan Bingtao. Yan Bingtao for me was always one of those players that was going to go, and again came out of our sports development projects.
Right.
Yeah, our second largest academy in the world, where we started developing snooker. This is now going back 8 or 9 years, was in Beijing. We set up an academy in Beijing with partners, with the government, in government buildings, right next to the sports ministry. There were 27 Xingpai tables in there. There were students coming in and out. There were schools coming in and out. And some of those students stayed in that academy. And one of those students was Yan Bingtao. And he went on shortly after to win the World Cup in China, and again, you know, that was the first major breakthrough, along with his partner. And there are others that are close, but it is tough. I do take the criticism, and I do accept the criticism that it's tough for the young players coming in financially, and it's tough for them to survive, and it's living away from home. I do accept this point that the players raise, but I do not think it leads, to answer your question, to cutting the tour. The minute you cut the tour, you take away the ability for that player to come in here and play against his hero on TV, and you lose. And again, we lose that opportunity of going over there and doing the same in different countries. So I like the shape of the tour. We can always improve it, but I think the numbers are right.
Yeah, and I mean, so far on the poll, it's early days. We run them for a week, but it's about 50-50 at the moment between people saying cut it and leave it as it is. So there is an option to add to it.
The jury is out. Yeah.
so that's great, because I mean, there's no point putting a poll up where 80-90% say the same thing, because I mean, we did that with the Crucible, and 89% say stick where it is. Although there was perhaps some more votes for the format actually and around the frames. But anyway, and that's quite a nice one, isn't it? Because you described how almost Ding broke through really, and almost that bit of almost unknown, and then bursting on the scene. And now, of course, he's got his academy in Sheffield, and we had I watched last night the episode 2 of the Make or Break series, which is fantastic. Really interesting. And again, it was interesting, wasn't it, seeing some of the young Chinese guys playing in England, playing at the academy, and it was funny how they said, when Ding comes in, they all sharpen up. There's almost this reaction. But how great that to come to the almost at home of the game in a way, isn't it, and have that academy for Chinese players to get support, to get integrated, and to be able to feel that they can build something here. And again, what a great model.
Yeah, it is. And again, let's be honest, it is still tough, but it is improving. And I think, it's really about players being able to do it for a period of time from an income perspective. Have they got enough sponsorship? Have they got enough support? Are they, is it wealthy family support, or is it somebody that's supported through projects or anything else? We have to have, all the options have to be open to find the talent. And I see talent all over the world all the time, and I often think to myself, why have we never seen you before? That's, for me, I'll never stop working knowing that there are people out there that have not had the opportunity. That's my, you started this program, so what do I do? That's if I was to roll it up in one thing, that would be it. I want to say everybody had the same opportunity to achieve their dreams.
Which is a lovely segue. I mean, we had Phil Seymour on it not long ago, and he was talking about that in other sports as well, like rugby and other sports. But he was saying about wanting to set up some kind of charity almost in his area to help youngsters who even just to get lifts to the venue to play or to practice, and even that thing about equipment. And it was really interesting because you almost can lose that, and you think, well, again, the talent won't come forward unless there's an infrastructure or support around them. But and of course, with football, you have the academies where you're trying to educate as well, keep them on track for their education, but also get them playing. So you can see how putting your arms really, I guess, is in a way, isn't it? Putting your arms around the sport and the people playing it to come through will pay dividends over time. So it sounds really exciting.
Yeah, you touch on an interesting point there, just to elaborate. And I know we're just chatting, but you talk about that some people are running charities, some people are running junior clubs, some people are these what I call the foot soldiers, the sales team, the people that are out there on the front line. These are the hundreds of people that we're developing as referees and coaches and community coaches. I've took a bit of stick from some people about our coaching scheme. I'm actually so proud of our coaching scheme and the coaches. And the reason for that is when we started this change in this restructure, we had a coaching scheme that predominantly focused on, if you were a top player and you wanted to become a coach, there was an opportunity to do qualifications. Nothing wrong with that. Great scheme, well done, fantastic. But it limits the capacity of how you can grow the sport. What I need is volume. This sport's massive. We've got national championships in nearly 100 countries around the world. We've got things going on every single day in the world somewhere, something connected to us. And we need hundreds of people, thousands, millions. And so we need those people. The coaching scheme now is well managed, well structured. It fits into UK's coaching credentials. It's a quality scheme. It's independently assessed. It's anybody who comes through it, good luck to them. They all become self-employed people, and they get to go out into the field with the ability to do it. And that ability will come at different levels. And this is what makes me proud of the coaching scheme. It's not all about saying this is the number one and you have to follow this. It's actually about the coach down the road who has the qualifications, the basic skill to get a young person off the street onto a small snooker table in a youth club. That is a community level one coach, and I want to see more and more of them, because they are the lifeblood of the sport. And I can speak from experience, because the person that coached me the first time was a referee who had an old Billiards and Snooker Control Council qualification for being the resident coach in Nottinghamshire. which is where I grew up. And he said, oh no, you start, we'll show you how to stand. I was 13, 12, I don't know, I don't remember. But that basic level of understanding and pointing me in the right direction was really what got me into the sport more and more. And those coaches, there are now, I think I'm right in saying, we took over that there were about, I think 10 to 15 coaches that were active in the world when we took over, because it was a limited scheme. There are around 450 active coaches in the world now, all running junior clubs, all running, Saturday morning sessions, junior leagues. Some are coaching at a high level, not all of them, and that doesn't matter. What matters is you're bringing them into that, and if they want to move on and go to the next level is there for them. That's there for the coaches, and it's there for the students. And then we need to get that inside the universities, the schools, and everything else. Some of it is working, some of it we're getting there, but we've a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I've also done that course you're talking about. I've done the level 1 coaching, and I know a few people that have done that coaching course too, and they're up in Cumbernauld, and they're running a very successful junior competition that I'll probably be running this morning. And the numbers are great, and they absolutely love it. So they're doing a great job up in Cumbernauld.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for passing that on. That's it's very good news.
Well, what are you going to do with yours, Lee? I'm going to challenge you now. So you've done your coaching. What are you going to do with it?
Well, when I was doing the coaching, it was with Andrew Highfield and Chris Lovell. And I didn't know I had so many problems with my game. Andrew Highfield was taking us through the coaching, and he's saying, what do you think you should do here? And I was going in completely the wrong way. But I got so much out of it, and the guys were brilliant at explaining the technical side of the game. But unfortunately, where I am in the Scottish Borders, we only have a couple of social clubs. We don't actually have a snooker hall. So I think they wanted me to maybe set up a coaching class for the kids, but they can't get into social clubs because they've got to be 18. We don't have a snooker club. The nearest club will be like 45, 50 miles away from us. So I'm sort of a victim of my location, but I can see how it's working for so many other people.
Yeah. And again, you wouldn't, you don't necessarily, the coaches that come in, they don't necessarily suddenly become full-time coaches. Most people work for a living.
Yeah.
Most people, this is a hobby. And very often it may be as simple as one day in 6 months' time, somebody passes you in the street and says, hey, that old community centre down the road, thinking of put a snooker table in it. This is when your moment will come. And we see that, we see that. And one of the next step for this is to ensure that there is access for funding for equipment and facilities. This is a very big subject with me. And we do not get the funding and support which other sports get. A lot of equipment is funded by various things, Sport England and so on. We're on the edge of that. And we do have an application into Sport England at the moment for official recognition. That's all running behind the scenes, and we're working very hard on all that. But in order to get to that point, we've had to deal with all the structures of how the sport works and have the outside accreditation for coaching and all these things. So there's a huge amount of effort gone in by the team to get this far. But we'll never run out of work, put it that way. There's a lot to do.
And you hinted there a little bit, Jason, about your start, about 12, 13. And I know Lee's interested in your pathway to becoming a pro and obviously your achievements. I mean, 28 in the world, no mean feat. So Lee, I'll let you lead on that one.
Yeah, obviously we spoke a lot about the running of the game. I was really interested to find out about Jason Ferguson, the player. How did it all start for you? And what... You were obviously a professional for a few years, but when you were elected to the board, did that sort of knock your snooker career on the head?
It finished me off, really, Lee. One simple line. When I joined the board, I was in the top 32, and probably knocking on the edge of doing a bit better than that as well. And yes, it got in the way, but I think the problem with me, you've probably worked that out already. I've got a very active mind. I like projects. I like to keep. And to play snooker every day and prepare for 6 events a year just wasn't doing it for me. And I was always doing other things on, finding other things to do and projects, volunteering, do some charity or anything. I need to keep doing things. I like doing things because it's good for me. It's good for me. I enjoy doing things and doing them well. And really joining the board was one of those things. Terry Griffiths called me. The game was going through a considerable amount of turmoil at the time. There were factions within the sport, and I was 33, I think, at the time. And Terry Griffiths rang me, who for me was, like speaking to God. I mean, he was like, Terry Griffiths, and he said, look, we really need to change things, and to do that, we need to bring in people who are young and perhaps presentable. I was always reasonably smart as a player, and that was always recognised, and presentable, and we want to bring people on the board. Thought, well, I'll think about that. And I wasn't busy with my playing career. I was busy enough, but not really busy enough to keep my brain going. And so I joined the board as a player representative director. 33 years old, and I spent 4 years working as a volunteer for the WPBSA. And I think for the last 2 or 3 years of that, working every day. I was on it all the time, and really during that time, that was the time when I got involved in working in Asia and saw a sort of better vision for the sport. In 2001, I was part of a team that took snooker to the Akita World Games in Japan, and this was kind of one of those moments where you walk out and you into an Olympic stadium and realize you've changed the sport forever for a while, because it now, it had gone from a pastime in a social club to a sport on a major sports platform, and that was a big sway for me in mentally in what I wanted to do within the sport. Sadly, it ended. It was an extremely challenging time, both personally, politically, and really, I actually stepped down after a period of chairman, because, to be honest with you, I came to the opinion that it would never work until we changed the structure. Right. And they were my parting words. Until it changes that structure properly, it's not going to change. We're going to have infighting. We're going to have the problem. And we'd left that structure really at the time to try and create that commercial company, which never really traded properly. So that was really how I got involved in the sport. And then I found myself away from the sport, did a few other things, and the phone rang one day and said, it's time to, time to come back. And I'm going to say it was a hard decision, but there was such a burning thing about unfinished business inside. 8 years or so, I just, and so I came back very part-time, doing a few days a month to start with, which turned into a few days a week, and then it turned into 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, quite quickly. Now I'm very tired.
It was, you said already, it was a turbulent time really when you got involved in that. And obviously I think around the time, if the internet's correct, I think Rex Williams was in the chair position. I think there was obviously some high profile players, Steve Davis, Dennis Taylor around as well. And then of course, then you had the thing of Barry leaving almost and moving into kind of the WST kind of gets going, and then you're involved and you're leading and you've got then that segregation in a way that then allows you to have two very clear focuses on what the sport needs to do going forward. It sounds like you needed almost a big bang to change the future for the sport.
That was absolutely it, and it needed to change drastically, really. And the structure we've got, I'm confident it can continue to grow. I'm absolutely confident that it will continue to build, because like you say, you've got that segregation. We can, as WPBSA, our WPBSA team can be running all this activity behind the scenes, and at the same time we're growing the World Snooker Tour with a commercial company and a commercial team. Building opportunities for all those players we're developing for the future, and the bigger that World Snooker Tour gets, that feeds the income to help us invest more. That's the structure, and it does work, and it has proven to work. We talk about the academies that we did overseas and Beijing and all the rest of it, and it's really it grew exponentially over a period of time. And you know, it's there's just so much out there to do. But I've loved every minute of it. And it's been great working with Barry. It's been great working with the team at World Snooker and Matchroom. My own team, I'm extremely proud of my own team at WPBSA. They're all, I would describe them as unique, hand-picked people with unique skills and all very different from each other. And I think there's such a great diverse message sometimes in our discussions. You know, I think, oh, this is a good idea, and somebody will say, Jason, shut up, what are you talking about? 2 minutes later, you know what, you're right, I think that's the term. But never let it be said that I don't come up with things. So but I love this sport so much. And we brushed on about my life slightly, and I'll never forget the moment that I walked into a billiard room for the first time. It was at Butlins holiday camp in Pwllheli in North Wales. I grew up in a mining town, and you know, it was quite common to go to Butlins for holidays and things like that. And I was very young. I walked in there. I was absolutely, totally mesmerized. I was young. What is this? You know, I just couldn't leave it alone. And my dad, you know, he took me there every day while we were on holiday. I just, you know, I must have been driving him mad. Looking back, you know, often saying, "Dad, we're snooker." You know, I just can't imagine what I was like. And then, and that was kind of the moment, the defining moment, I say, where I fell in love with this sport. And I think what the rest is, there's a lot of history, a lot of water under the bridge. But I will say, I get the same feeling today when I walk into one of our venues or anything. Wow, I love this sport. I do love it. I love it.
Who did you? Sorry. No, you go, Lee. I think I was interested in who.
Sorry, I was just going to ask Jason. You know, does snooker run in the family, or were you on your own in that aspect?
Yeah, yes, I was really. I grew up in a family of a hard-working family. My mum and dad were amazing, and my sister. You know, I've got a sister. I grew up in Mansfield, small town, small mining town, in Mansfield, and I grew up at the back of a coal mine. Where you know, it was you couldn't go far in Nottinghamshire during those years when I was young without being next to a coal mine. And so I grew up in a very industrial area. My mum worked in a factory, worked very hard, and used to fold jumpers for Marks and Spencers and things like this, you know, in the old hosiery business, which was quite big in the area. So my father was a miner. He was a coal-faced miner. He crawled around on his hands and knees since he was a teenager in a tunnel that was 18 inches high, scraping coal out. And you know, when I hear about hard work, and people say, "Oh, you know, it's hard work, isn't it?" You know, I always look back at my own family, how hard they've worked to provide opportunity for me, and how hard that was as a profession. My father had 2 dreadful accidents at the mine over the years. I was taken out of school, junior school, when I was very young, because basically a coal wall had come in and, you know, and covered him. So they got him out, thankfully. And I remember to this day going to see him at home, and he was covered in cuts and bruises, and you know, and a few years later, you know, I remember a piece of machinery hit him in the face, and it almost took one of his eyes out. He was a tough guy, my dad. Yeah, he was a lovely, gentle man, but he was, you know, it was okay. It was just a scratch to him, you know. It was just, that's how it was, and it was great, and it was great for me. Took me all over the place playing snooker, you know, weekends, and he used to save up his holidays, or rest days, they used to call them. Take me to things, and you know, I had a great family upbringing, a great life. But to answer the question about did snooker grow in the family, it didn't. But what it did, snooker grew up. We grew up with snooker in mining families, because in mining families, there were always a miners' welfare or a working men's club. Conservative clubs were there. There were other clubs. There were social environments in and around the coal mines. The coal mines built communities, and you know, I can, you know, just think back to how many snooker tables there were within 5 miles of my home. You know, a lot is the answer. And there was always leagues, there was always somewhere to go and play, and it was always a sport of it was a game back then, not a sport, but it was always a sport of interest for people, and good league structures where you could test and hone your skills, I should say. So I kind of grew up in that environment and enjoyed it. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and even, I mean, the legacy of the miners' welfare, I mean, it still lives on, doesn't it? I mean, we've got local football, I mean, Nottingham, we've got local football clubs who are still Gedling miners' welfare. And I think, and I think I'm going to say this wrong, and you'll tell me off, Jason, but some people call it Rainworth or Reneth. Is it Reneth or Rainworth?
Yeah,
Does it matter?
It doesn't really matter, but that is actually very close to where I grew up, and it's actually close to where you live. So I do know. Well, you saying you're at Gedling site, so that is we're from the same area, so you will relate to some of the things I'm saying about the area. But yeah, Reneth, there was a very good. My father actually was a miner in the mine in Reneth or Rainworth,
right?
What we call it. He was a coal-faced miner for many years, and yeah, it's but in there was also one or two decent snooker clubs.
Yeah.
I used to play at. So
yeah. My day job, I cover our job. We're responsible across the whole of Nottinghamshire, so you know, Clipston and places like that. I'm quite familiar with some of the landscape up in that North Notts area. But yeah, no, I mean, and do you think in some way that, you know, that there's something around, you must have appreciated your dad's work ethic and almost that determination, really? It sounds like he was someone who did an honest day's job, got stuck in. Is that, you said about ideas, but even you can have ideas but not do much with it, so there's something around a drive in you that seems to be obvious from the conversation as well. Is that all self-generated? Do you feel some of it's from the family?
No, I think there is a work ethic in the family, you know, and I think, you know, looking back at my family life, although we were surrounded by, say, miners' welfares and things like that, where snooker tables were, you know, my father didn't drink. You know, he didn't drink, he didn't smoke. He didn't really go out much, to be honest with you. You know, and I grew up in a hard-working family. So yes, the work ethic comes from my family life, and my whole family were in this industry. You spoke about Clipston. My grandfather worked in Clipston mine. My other grandfather worked in the same mine as my father. My grandma worked in the canteen to the mine. I grew up in this world, and yeah, people worked hard. People worked very hard, and it's interesting, I suppose, that work ethic. It was. My dad was he was a genius. My father, he honestly, he was just a genius of a man. Because when we didn't have a lot of money, and when we came back from that holiday that I spoke about in Pwllheli in North Wales, we got given this very small snooker table. I still have it, very small snooker table, and they were like marbles, the balls, you know. And you know, there it was every day. It used to fit on the kitchen table, you know, get up early every day. I've always got up early. That's one thing I've always done. And then after a while, my dad said, you know what, I think our Jason can, you know, he looks like he can play this game, you know. And he went into the garage, and over a period of time, he built me a small snooker table. And he made it with his own bare hands. It was 6 feet by 3, and he cut the pockets. He shaped the cushions. He built the cushion rails, and this table folded away like a table tennis table because we had a small house. So this table,
amazing.
This small 6 foot by 3 table, it had the ability to use full size snooker balls on it. So it was something he built to train me, you know, and I was young at the time, and it made this metal frame, so this table opened up, and we used to take this snooker table from the, you know, it used to sit in the living room on its side, like imagine a table tennis table folded up. It used to sit in the living room behind the sofa, and then you could pull the table out into the middle of the floor, and the sofa would push underneath the table, and the tabletop would fold up and lock into place. It was genius, honestly.
Fantastic.
Right? And I used to be, so, you know, I've always got up early, as I said. So as a teenager growing up, 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, if the sun was up, I was up. You know, must have driven my parents. So I was up and I was out, and I was, you know, knocking balls around on this table. Absolutely fabulous thing. And a few years after starting the coaching scheme, Chris Lovell, who you spoke about, our head of coaching, he came to me and said, "Oh, you know, some school programs." And, yeah, great. I looked in the school. I thought, do you know what? I've got just the thing for this in my right. So I took that design over to our table manufacturer, Xingpai Star Tables, and had that table manufactured with a few modifications for health and safety and what have you.
Yeah.
We remanufactured that table. That table is the Q-zoning school table that you see now, which we have now made hundreds and hundreds of them and given them away to schools and youth centres. And they are that table that my dad made me is there. It sits there, and it reminds me of him every time I see it. And
that's a great story.
It's a great story, isn't it? Yeah,
because those tables are brilliant. I've seen them at events, and they're fantastic tables.
Yeah, and we constantly modify them, as you do with everything. But the principle, the concept was it should fold up on its side, so it's not too high, and it should be on so we can put it in a cupboard. So, you know, you can turn a sports hall from a table tennis room to a basketball room, and on Wednesday it's snooker day. You know, that was the concept. So yeah, so that's where it originated from. It originated from Highfield Avenue in Mansfield.
Brilliant.
Oh wow! I mean, the more you talk about him, he's just a fascinating guy, isn't he? To do all of this with the background that he's had as well, it's quite an inspiration, really.
He was quite the inventor, my dad. And you know, I talk about it. He came to me one day when I was young, and I'll go on a bit now.
No, go for it.
He said, "Look at your mum there with that tin opener. Do you remember the old-fashioned tin openers?" He used to
yeah.
He said, "Look at your mum struggling with that." You know, He said, honestly, he said, we should have winders on these things. We should be cutting the side of the tin off. It's simple. He said, it's the tin. He went to the guy, he made a tin opener. And that's the kind of thing you buy in the shops today. You know, this was like in the 1970s he was making. You know. He was a great guy, my dad. He was a real inspiration for me in my life. And he was born in Belfast, came to England when he was 14 years old. And with odd shoes on his feet. Right. And
what's your dad's name? I feel like we should say his name.
Thomas Ferguson. My dad's name is Thomas Ferguson. He passed away a few years ago, and I miss him dearly, but I'm thankful for wonderful childhood and life I had with him.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's some fantastic stories. I feel like a separate episode just on Thomas would be possible. I suppose what would be interesting really is going back to, so we had a few questions from people, and I think a lot of it, what I think is really interesting is almost that bit around decision making around the tour. So how that works in terms of your side of it, Barry, historically Barry's side of it, and Steve now, Steve Dawson. So, so say for example, we had one question from one of the people we correspond with a lot, actually, Aaron Sancho in Spain, in Zaragoza, and she was saying about the ambitions to bring the tour to Spain and whether that's possible. And it just got me thinking about who makes the decisions around where you go with the tour, and also even the format. So, the short format's coming more this season with the British Open. We had the Championship League, but that's moved to the start. So I guess it's two things. So one's about the venues. How do you choose where you're going to go? But also, what about the format and how many events you have? Is that a collaboration between the tour and the WPBSA? How does that work?
Yeah, it's very much a collaboration, and what we would say, I mean, let's touch upon the Spain point, and that really is down to finding opportunities, finding leads, finding a route through really to get to the right people, find the right promoters, and so on to work with. Much of that may come from the WPBSA's work because we're out and about, we're in the field doing things. So when you see something new crop up, with the Turkish Masters as an example, it comes from working WPBSA, having partners, working with partners, but actually making that a reality into an opportunity, into a commercial model that can work, is when the World Snooker team will kick in. I sit on the board of both these companies, so we have a direct dialogue all the time going. World Snooker constantly coming up with formats, looking at venues, everything else. Sometimes venues choice is driven by independent promoters, outside promoters.
Right.
Sometimes it's driven by COVID times. Milton Keynes, I think we lived there, you know, last year because it was secure. We got the building taped up and we were staying in, you know. That's the way it worked. So some of it's driven by the practicalities, and some of it is driven by promoters. And then there is the challenges, of course, that sometimes decisions get made on venues and people, what, you know, why have we gone there? You know, why is the Scottish Open in Llandudno? Lee, I'm sure you would like to know the answer.
Yes.
Yeah, you know why? Because we were due to be playing in the Emirates Arena as usual. Decisions were taken within the Emirates Arena. They're doing a lot of anti-gaming activity this year, and it was felt by them that it wouldn't be appropriate, because we've got some gaming sponsors still associated with our sport. It was felt that it wouldn't be appropriate by them to continue at this late stage to try and find venues. Post-COVID, what's happened post-COVID? All the venues up and down the country, even worldwide, this is a problem. We're finding that any event that was due to happen has been given postponed dates. So 90% of the dates are already full before you even try and find a venue. So imagine trying to fit in 10% of any venues that are available, and then try and get that down to venues which are possible to use, because size and shape and, you know, atmospherics and everything else. So that's the challenge, been the challenge this year, and we are in an interim year, is the reason. So Llandudno have been a great partner to us, and they made the offer and for us to go there. So that's it's really simple answer. We want to return to Scotland as soon as possible with the Scottish Open, and you know, hopefully we'll have a better year when we're coming out of this, and I think next year will start to look a bit more like it should.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, and it sounds like a very much a joint decision. But so we had the British Open. We had a Superfans episode where we met with some of the guys who are, you know, well-known faces at the Crucible, and that was great fun. There was a real good exchange, and they did talk about the British Open, and they didn't know the reason for the format, so they didn't know, you know, who drove that really, and they wondered if it was ITV4. But then I think we heard elsewhere it wasn't ITV4. Could you tell us how that came about? Obviously, bringing back a big event with the prestige, big prize money for the winner, but a very short format.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. I mean, the one I'll start by saying the one thing we have to do is make sure that we don't do everything the same. In any normal year, we will run 28 events throughout the year, all over the world. Many of those are shared on the same channels. Eurosport will show 19 major events, for example. What you can't do to Eurosport is say, oh, here's 19 of the same to fill 19 weeks. It's not going to wash. You know, we've got to keep it interesting. We've got to keep looking at it. We're in sport, but we're also in show business where people are buying tickets and viewers are going online to watch. So it's got to be entertained. It's got to watch. So taking that into consideration is only one point. The second point is, as we're easing out of our lockdown times, and we're looking at what our options are, we were due to be going out to China by July or September and deliver big major events back to back. So we were supposed to be doing qualifying in these periods. Now, it soon became apparent that that wasn't going to happen. So looking around the team, we said, right, you know, we're going to have to think, we need to think hard now. We're going to have to put events on. And those events will be to service agreements, that we're to develop new ideas, and also new formats and think what we can do different. British Open was one of those, and thought, what do we got? What do we got in the history and heritage of the sport? WPBSA, what you got? What did you used to do? Hang on a minute. British Open, that's you know, one of our team, it was Miles actually, that came up and said, well, why don't we bring the British Open back? What a great idea, Miles. You know, let's have a look at it. And yes, the decision on the format will be made. We'll look at it. How many days can we have a venue for? Is it start? How many sessions can we fit in? How many sessions are we contracted to deliver to television? There's a second. There's another one that people don't think of. You know, how many hours is that? How many minutes of live broadcast around the world to deliver to TV stations are we contracted to deliver? So all these things have to be brought in. You know, if people say, oh, just go to this place and go and put another event on, do it best of 9. It doesn't work that way. It has to be a commercial model, and it has to work commercially. Otherwise, you can hemorrhage You know, you could lose £1 million on an event just in, you know, easy.
Yeah.
So, you know, it has to work. So the decisions are made around the assessment of all that. Limited amount of time in the venue, limited amount of broadcast hours, trying to attract a broadcast. So bear in mind, the British Open didn't have a broadcaster when we decided we were going to do it. ITV said, we'd like to have that back. That used to be ours. We want it. Great. And what a great team we've got at ITV. Fabulous studio. All of our broadcasters do an amazing job with their studios, their production value, and things they do. So, you know, bringing ITV back to the table was important to that. And they've obviously got a lot of history with it. So they were very much into it. Personally, best of 5 years as a snooker player, Lee, you'll relate to this.
It's very short,
isn't it? It is a bit short. Having said that, when we got to the end of the event, the viewing figures are amazing. I will tell you, the viewing figures are terrific for the British Open. The enthusiasm from the fans has been terrific, and I you know, you guys as working online, you will see, actually, you will have seen the sway of opinion move slightly. You know, we were monitoring it and said, hang on, we're getting slaughtered here, day one. Nightmare. You know, I'm going to give it time, no panic. And after a few days, it started to really kick in, and we saw some great stories come out, and, you know, and the comeback of Mark Williams and then going on to win it. You know, it starts to unravel history again, doesn't it? And the stories. So it works as it is. It's a standalone one-off event. It's a one event. We think we'll do it again, by the way, but it's a short format event. What we have got when we come out of this season and we go into the following season, we'll then be looking at, we could have between 3 and 6 major events in Asia again, all big events, all best of 9s, all for huge prize money. We could also have, you know, on top of that, we'll have the new event in Turkey and Antalya. By the way, it is beautiful, this place. You know, one thing I wanted to do coming out of COVID, this COVID climate, was to find places that are going to make people happy again. You know, we've all been locked up. We all need to get out, and I really want to deliver for our players destinations when they arrive and they can really enjoy being on the World Snooker Tour. And I'm really sorry to all those players that have had to suffer that last year of being locked away, and, you know, come in here, stay there for 24 hours until your test comes back, come in this room, sit there for a bit. No, it's just, that's not what we bring people into this sport for, but needs must. We've kept it going, I suppose. But it will be great to go to some of these places. The events will all look different, is the answer. And they have to. The shootout is even shorter format, isn't it? I mean, that's But
you're speaking about the calendar there, Jason, and it's obviously a very busy calendar we've got. Do you think eventually players will pick their events more sort of strategically, you know, maybe pick and choose their events like the golf tour?
That was always part of the vision, Lee. I think we've always thought that may happen. We may end up in a scenario where players are saying, I won't play in that one, but I tell you what, I'm going to pace myself a bit. And we were getting to that point post lockdown. We were getting to the point where we were going from A to B, and I know this because I was with the players, and we were getting on planes. We were traveling across the world. We were getting there just in time, and I mean just in time. You know, we hadn't got the opportunity to spare some time for delayed flights or anything. You know, now we've got to be a bit more. We have to really look at this now with testing procedures and what does the future hold. Nobody really knows at this stage, but it is. I do think players will pick and choose, and we were getting to that point where players had decided not to play in certain events. I think what's interesting about that, you know, I've often heard, you know, when Ronnie stops playing, people won't watch snooker anymore. What a load of rubbish. Honestly, what we do know is, even during a year of Ronnie O'Sullivan not playing snooker, we do know that we had record viewing figures during that time. That's not taking away anything from Ronnie O'Sullivan, who is an absolute genius, who we all love, of course. But the sport will always produce the stories. You're both fans of the sport, and I think you would agree there will always be a little twist and a turn. You know, at 53 years of age and a lifetime in this sport, I think I've seen it all. And then honestly, next week I'll say, no way that's happened. You know, something will just say, well, you know, this is what makes snooker great, the drama. But yeah, the calendar is really important. There's a lot of talk about, can we have an Asian leg? Can we go to China and do 3 events back to back? Well, that would be nice for players. But actually, it's not nice for China Central Television broadcaster who wants 3 events spread over a year, or 4 events spread over a year. So it all depends on the commercial arrangements of how we can make these events happen. And we're constantly working on it. We are looking at it. We should go from Thailand to China. We should, we shouldn't be going from Australia all the way up to Poland and then back down to China again. We are looking at it. Sometimes we're tied by a contract, but we are, I think, getting better at it.
Oh, thank you for the insight. That's really interesting, Lee, isn't it? Just to see the mechanics of it. There's a bit, in a way, you hinted at it a bit, really, but there's a bit around not biting the hand that feeds, I guess. But you mentioned gambling there, and obviously, if again, I mean, I like my football, and football. I'm a Forest fan. I'm quite glad that they don't have a gambling firm as their main sponsor anymore. And it's obviously a big topic, but snooker derives good income from gambling firms at the moment. And I know as the governing body, you've had some high profile cases of players who have had bans for gambling. So I guess I'm just interested, it's one of the, like in the old days where we used to have lots of income from tobacco companies, etc. And, the game was quite different really. But what's the stance on gambling firms being involved in snooker then, in terms of as a governing body in the World Snooker Tour?
Well, yeah, I think they of course, gambling has been the gambling companies, who are regulated and licensed, by the way, have been great supporters of sport generally. Now, the critic would say, oh yeah, that's for their own gain because they're making loads of money out of betting on your games, and I'm sure that's the case. But the fact is, they have provided a great source of income to sport generally. And one thing I would like to say, and I'd like to say that in particular in respect to somebody like Fred Dome of Betfred. Fred's he is like one of our greatest players in his character. He loves sport with a passion, and he really loves to see winners. It's interesting talking to people like that at the head of some of these companies. Fred's sponsored the World Championship through Betfred. He's got a fantastic team, Mark Pearson. They're great to have around. They're fun guys. They make the most of the sport. They get into the sport. They really love it. But it's worth noting that their income just doesn't just go into winners' pockets. They are a significant percentage of their investment in our sport is poured into grassroots development and funding. We talked about developing small tables and giving them away. We are using some of that money to buy small tables to give them away to schools. It doesn't say Betfred all over them, for obvious reasons. We're very careful about where we put it. But actually, we have to respect and be thankful for the income that they have provided to allow us to grow to this point. Now, we know governments are looking at it. We know, there's potential for regulation to come, which may restrict it. We are not solely reliant on gaming sponsorship, and I think, if I could say that in the greatest of respect, we've got a mix of sponsorship these days. Look at the World Snooker Tour I spoke about a few years ago, 28 events around the world. We had banks, financial institutions, investment companies, real estate companies, sports goods companies. Actually, gambling sponsors are one of those multiple sponsors that we have. So we're not solely reliant upon it. Many players ring me up and say, what are you going to do when it goes, Jace? You're finished. Rubbish. It's another hearsay thing. Rubbish. We're not finished at all. We've got a fantastic, valuable product which produces thousands of hours of viewership, producing hundreds of millions of eyes watching it. We've got a fantastic product. We are as competitive as anybody in this market. So I think, my own stance on it is we will always fall in line with regulation. We will always look to work with, if we are working with gambling firms, they will be regulated and licensed properly gambling firms, which they are. And we're very careful about what we do with that in terms of junior players. We don't allow gambling logos on our junior players, for example, and things like this. There's a lot we are doing behind the scenes, the small things, to try and protect against any problems for the future. But look, it's been a source of income, as was tobacco in the early days. And it's interesting, we talk about history. I was actually at the head of WPBSA when tobacco sponsorship went. So
Right.
it was an extremely challenging time. It did leave a huge hole. You know, many people say, you know, gaming is going to go and it's going to leave the same hole. It won't, is the answer. We're very confident about our business going forward and where it can go.
Yeah. No, that's what an answer. And I think we've actually had somebody else ask a question about, I guess they want a bit of gossip really. So somebody called on Twitter, somebody called Phil Robinson eligible bachelor, so there's an advert. Says what he asked what it was been like working with Barry Hearn, and he wondered if you've ever had a major argument. I mean, I'd be amazed if you haven't, because if you work closely with people, that happens, doesn't it?
I've never had an argument with Barry Hearn, and you know, he is a very inspirational character, I will say. He's enjoyable to work with. Everything is fun around him. Look, you get the best out of people. You know, there's some great things Barry says over the years, and they always make you think. You know, I like to pride myself in the fact that I don't like to miss opportunities. You know, if there's something that needs chasing, let's chase it, and let's have a look at it. You know, and don't walk past things. You know, people walk past things every day and say there's nothing good around. You know. And there is. You just got to look a bit harder sometimes. The one thing Barry, you know, I think Barry once said, he said, would you walk past a pile of £50,000 lying on the street? I remember him saying that to somebody once. And he went, no. He said, well, there you are then. You know, you've just walked.
Yeah.
You know, but I've never, he's always, with me personally, I've had a fantastic relationship. But you have to remember also, you know, I've had a shareholder relationship with Barry. The WPBSA is a major shareholder, as is Matchroom Sport. Barry's been wonderful for snooker, because snooker was his founding sport of the Hearn Matchroom empire, which exists today, and it's fantastic to see that business and how it operates. I was in Matchroom's offices yesterday. What a fantastic, you know, energetic bunch of people working in multiple sports. And when we did the deal with Matchroom Sport, people said, oh, we've sold out to Barry Hearn. No, we haven't sold out to Barry Hearn. What we've done, we've managed to attract one of the largest expanding sports promotion businesses in the world to this sport, is the answer. And that's what we've done. And it's beneficial for Matchroom Sport to be with us, because we're now growing and servicing them as well. But we're tapping into their, I don't know how many staff there are there. There's a lot. You know, I don't know, what is it, 100 staff more maybe, but whatever it is we're tapping into, that's what they bring to the party. So I've really enjoyed working with Barry. We knew the day would come when he decided to retire, and you know, seeing him today playing a bit more cricket and doing fishing a bit more and things like that, I mean, if he can't go and enjoy himself after the life he's had, then there's something wrong. But he is a genius of a man. He's inspirational. He's full of ideas and energy all the time, and he's a workaholic. He's another one that just gets up in the morning. You know, he gets the job done. He's great fun to be around. Never had an argument with him. We've had a few discussions and debates. Of course, you know, I've got to represent our players and our sport. What that might not work purely black and white commercially sometimes. You know, but between us, we've always found the right way forward, and I think it's been good. I have to say, I'm enjoying the same relationship with Steve Dawson.
Oh, good.
Steve Dawson, the new chairman, has worked with Barry for, I think, maybe 40 years or so, I think, is the number. Steve Dawson is a very classy operator. He's a lot quieter than Barry. He gets on with it. Very good administrator. He's quality. He's classy. He's great to work with. And he's very much a detail man as well. And I really like that. He's got great qualities, and I'm excited about working with him more and more, spending a bit more time with him. But the team itself is still intact. It's the same team that we started with 6 events that delivered 28 events all over the world. Myself, commercial director Miles Pierce, do a lot of frontline traveling and doing all the things outside of the UK. Fantastic operations team, Nigel Oldfield and his ops team, and the event management teams, all got hands on doing great jobs, and it's the same team, and we know what we're doing. We just need a bit of freedom now to operate.
Yeah.
We just need a little bit more, a little bit more travel, I think, and a few borders open, and we'll be getting bigger again.
Great. Well, I mean, it sounds like the future of the sport is in safe hands between yourselves and Steve and their operation working together. It's really encouraging. So Lee, did you before? Because I know we do this more for the players, declaring the colours, but Jason is a player still at heart. So, is there anything you wanted to cover before we clear the colours?
I just really wanted to ask you, Jason, if you've got any favourite players, from the past when you were playing, or even further back to the present. Who do you like to watch?
It's a great question, Lee. Actually, my hero in this sport from being a very young age was Steve Davis.
Yeah.
And I played Steve Davis when I was 15 in front of 1,000 people in an exhibition.
Wow.
And I'll never forget it to this day. My parents were there. I beat him. And I was
wow.
In Newark, not far from where you are. So I played in this one frame, and it is an exhibition, a bit of fun. And he went to look purposely, made a point of going to try and find my mum and dad after. And he went to my mum and dad and he said, look, your son, he said, definitely, he's definitely got it. He said, I want you to just know that from me, because he was world champion. He said, so, if he can get to the events and you can support him, I think he'll make it.
God,
very classy.
Fortunately, I was able to thank him for that later in life.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to serve, he served the board as the first, when we did the restructure, he stayed on as a players director, supporting the playing membership and actually headlined the start of the coaching scheme. He came out to Beijing when we headlined the opening of the academy with us, and really played his part and gave back to the sport. I love Steve. He's great.
Yeah.
He got a real bad reputation in the 80s of being boring. He's one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. He's dry, he's got that sense of humour. If you spent a night with Steve Davis, he'll have you rolling around the floor laughing. He's hilarious.
I've watched an exhibition, Jason, and it's probably the best exhibition I've seen. He's so funny.
Yeah, he is, honestly, and he's like that in everyday life. He's really nice to spend time with, Steve, and a hero of mine. So
yeah,
and it was nice. It's nice to see him. I saw him 2 weeks ago. He looks well. He's in great form, honestly. He's in great form. So
in terms of people you'd like to get on, it'd be great to get someone like Steve Davis on, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. Okay, well, look, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. I think we're going to clear the colours. I don't know if you're familiar with this one, Jason, but we just do a little bit of a quick fire round really at the end to just to round out a few probing questions and see how you cope with those, if you don't mind humouring us.
No.
Okay, so this is linked a little bit to what Lee just asked you in a way, but slightly different. So, and whether you want to say this because your position, but who do you think the funniest player on the tour is in your experience? Who makes you laugh the most?
This is a great question. Is this quick fire? Because I'm chairman. I like to consider. Yeah. Do you know what? That's it. Wow. That is a really tough question. One thing I will say, just very quickly, is spending time with snooker players is funny. Generally, they are great characters. They all grew up in the kind of environment I grew up in, and we can have a lot of fun. And some people are just hilarious, really. And one guy that makes me laugh still is Ken Doherty. He's one of my long-time friends.
Right.
And he's got the most infectious laugh in the world. And he's been great.
Right, we'll go with Ken. I think that's the yellow put away then, Jason. Thanks for that. Lee, let's go for green.
Yeah, green ball question, Jason. What's your favourite venue outside the Crucible? I know you played at the Crucible, but your favourite venue outside the Crucible?
As a player or as an administrator?
Both, if you like.
Okay, look, as a player outside the Crucible, where did I like playing? I loved playing at Plymouth when we used to play at the British Open years ago. For me, I love being by the coast. I love the ocean, and I like to sail, and I love being in that venue for that period of time. Other than that, I think it would be overseas. I mean, if to say favorite venue, I think Shanghai. We used to have this great venue in Shanghai. It's actually been knocked down now. But it was just magical, the Shanghai Masters. It was an old venue, an old building, but it really created atmosphere and passion for snooker. It grew and grew. It's being regenerated, and we hope to return to the area. But the Great Hall, it was called, in Shanghai. Fantastic venue. I think many players would agree.
Brilliant.
Lovely. Okay, that's yellow and green nicely put away there. The brown then. So who do you think the player who hasn't yet won the World Championship, who do you think the next one will be who wins it for the first time?
Oh dear, what a great question that is. That is a great question. The next player who will win it. Wow. I don't know. But can I just say that there's a few that should have won it?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's players that should have won the World Championship, technically brilliant. You know, one close to you, Michael Holt, technically superb as a player, you know, and what held these players back? I don't know. But the next player to win it, who will win it? Mark Allen.
Ah, good one. Yeah. Yeah,
you know, what an out-and-out competitor Mark Allen is. He's a true sportsman in terms of his playing. He's hungry, he wants to win. Doesn't seem to do it for any reason other than he likes winning. And the person I relate to with that would be Hendry. You know, Hendry loved winning.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, we'll go Mark Allen. Yeah, that's a good one. We've had Kyron Wilson a lot, haven't we, Lee? We've had Kyron. A few people have said Ding, but they feel that Ding's kind of moment has passed. That's come out a few times as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kyron, but Mark Allen, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, seeing him at the end of the Championship League, he was absolutely brutal with how he finished off at the end of that tournament. Okay, you've got a good one for the blue there, haven't you, Lee?
Blue, I always say the blue's a tricky cut to the middle. You're tight in the cushion, Jason. If there was a film made of your life, which actor would you get to play you?
Oh dear. What a great question, honestly. I wasn't ready for these. Actor to play my life. God, do I have to answer? I can't even think, honestly. I can't even think who would play my life. You would of course always want to have. You know, any man would choose. He'd probably choose James Bond, wouldn't he? And say,
yeah, exactly.
Craig, you know, because he'd say, listen, that image, isn't it? You know, yeah. So probably go on. I'll go with that. That would be
perfect.
There we go. Good stuff. The pink one, it might be difficult because you're very open anyway in terms of telling us about yourself. But is there anything interesting in terms of personal facts or anything that we might not know about you that you would share?
Yeah, so that's another good one. Interesting facts about me. Things that you don't know. Well, I think I told a little bit about my history and where I came from, and I love sailing. Right, I mentioned this earlier. I love the ocean very much, and this again was a childhood thing. Because when I grew up with my father and my mum, we actually used to go to use the thing, Cornwall, Wales, wherever it was. And I used to scuba dive with my father. And again, great memories. And I love to scuba dive. And one day I would like to go back and do more sailing and scuba dive again. There you go.
Oh, beautiful. That sounds great. Well, we're right at the business end of this now. I'll hand you back over.
This for the match, Jason. Black ball question. If you wrote an autobiography, what would you call it?
Because We Can.
There we go. That was easy.
I think it's already in the process, isn't it? By the sound of things.
It's not, no, but it's a motto. You know, people say to me, "Why are you doing that?" Well, because we can. We're not doing it.
Yeah.
We walk past things. I'll give you an example. In the last few weeks, we've been really busy in China. I know I'm sat in my office in Nottinghamshire, but we've been really busy doing things. We opened the Twin Towers of Chengdu last week, which is a huge opening ceremony in the city, played videos on buildings and everything. And a week before that, we did the China Trading Service Fair with the Chinese government, a huge trade fair where we promoted snooker as a you know, sort of Anglo-Sino relations sport, you know, because it's strong in both territories. And people say, "Why are you doing that?" Up to me all the time. you know, why are you spending hours and hours producing this stuff and doing it? And we do it because we can. We should never walk. This is a Barry Hearn motto: never walk past an opportunity. You never know what it's going to bring. And I think I've done a lot of things in my life simply because they were there to do. Things like I ran the Citizens Advice Bureau in my town. With there's another fact that people don't know. I did it as a volunteer. I served my town council when I left snooker for a considerable period of time, and took voluntary directorships and voluntary roles of some paid, some not unpaid. Did lots of things. Helped my sports facilities in my town be protected in perpetuity so that they couldn't be built on and things. Why did you do it? Well, I did it because we can. If people are going to walk past everything, the world's going to fall apart, in my view. And I think sometimes you have to put a marker down and just change something.
Brilliant.
Wow. What a fantastic answer. I think that's why we do the podcast. I think it's because we can.
There you go. Why are you doing
There's no master plan.
Exactly. There you go. Magical.
Oh, great. That's a great way to tie it up. I mean, really, all that remains, I think, Jason, to say is, it's exciting. It sounds like, as I said earlier, that the future of the sport is in safe hands. You're obviously excited about where it can go. And as fans, we should be too. So, very grateful for your time today and all the help to set this up. You've been a fantastic guest. And it'd be great to maybe talk again in the future at some point and see how the journey's proceeding.
Thank you for having me. It's been nice talking to you both.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time, Jason. For me, what's came across is your passion for the game, which is knows no bounds. So thanks for being so generous with your time, and I wish you well along with your team for the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure.